The Midnight Passenger. Back in 2020, when the pandemic was still throwing everything into chaos, I started driving for Uber to make ends meet. I'd just been laid off from my retail job and needed quick money. The thing about rideshare gigs, especially when you're working late nights, is that you meet all kinds of people. Awkward passengers, drunk ramblers, strange conversations. But nothing compares to what happened one Friday night in October. It was just after midnight. I had dropped someone off at a hotel on the edge of town when I got a new ride request. Pickup location, a bowling alley in a rundown strip mall about 6 minutes away. Everything about it looked normal. The rider's name was Derek. I accepted the ride and headed over. When I arrived, the place was nearly deserted. The only lights were a few scattered parking lot lamps. No cars, no movement. The bowling alley was clearly closed. But under one of the lights stood a man, alone, motionless. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, wearing a gray hoodie and jeans, hands in his pockets, head down like he was studying the ground. I pulled up beside him, rolled down my window. "You, Derek?" I asked. He slowly nodded, walked over, and got into the back seat without a word. I started the trip and asked if the destination was correct. An address about 20 minutes away, in a residential area I'd never been to. "Yeah, that's right," he said in a calm, flat tone. He didn't sound drunk or high, just off, detached, like something inside him was missing. We drove in silence for the first few minutes. I kept checking the rearview mirror. Every time I looked, he was staring straight ahead. Not out the window, not at his phone, just at the back of my head. Trying to break the tension, I asked, "How's your night going?" He paused, then said, "Just needed to get out of there." I asked, "Out of where?" He replied, "Doesn't matter." So I dropped it. As we got closer to the destination, I noticed the area was getting more remote. Big yards, no streetlights, lots of trees, dark, quiet. Then, about 5 minutes from the address, he leaned forward and said, "Actually, can you pull into that driveway right there?" He pointed to an old house on the right. The place looked abandoned. No lights, no car in the driveway, lawn overgrown, paint peeling off the siding. "This your place?" I asked. "Just pull in," he said. I hesitated, but turned into the driveway and parked near the front of the house. He didn't get out. "Everything okay?" I asked. He stared at the front door. Then he said, "Wait here." He stepped out and walked around the side of the house, disappearing into the darkness. I sat there, heart pounding. The ride was still active on the app, but everything in my gut told me something wasn't right. After a couple minutes, I made a decision. I manually ended the trip and shifted the car into reverse. Just then, I saw him coming back, fast. His hands were empty, but his face, he looked different, like something had changed. There was this strange energy in his eyes, part anger, part excitement. I instinctively unlocked the doors, though every part of me screamed not to. He got in and said, "Take me to the other place." I asked, "What other place?" "Just drive, I'll tell you." I said, "You need to put it in the app." No response. He just stared at me through the rearview mirror. Again, I said, "I can't take you unless you add the destination." He stayed quiet. Then, after a few long seconds, he said, "Take me back to where you picked me up." I didn't argue. We drove back in silence. But it wasn't peaceful. The air in the car felt heavy, oppressive, like something bad was sitting right behind me. I could feel him staring at me the whole ride. Trying to ease the tension, I said, "Rough night, huh?" He replied, "You could say that." I asked if everything was okay. He answered, "Not yet." That was the last thing he said. When we got back to the strip mall, I pulled into the same spot where I'd picked him up. I was about to say something when he leaned forward again and asked, "You ever wonder how you're going to die?" I froze, let out an awkward laugh. "Not really something I think about," I said. He didn't laugh, just leaned back in his seat. Then, after a few seconds, he said quietly, "I think about it all the time." He opened the door but didn't step out right away. Just sat there, half in and half out. Then, he looked at me one last time and said, "You picked the wrong guy up tonight." He closed the door and walked off, disappearing behind the bowling alley into the shadows. I sat there, too shaken to move. Eventually, I drove home, checking my mirrors the whole way. When I got back, I opened the Uber app to review the trip. That's when I noticed something wrong. The ride details were gone. No name, no profile picture, no history. The name Derek had vanished. It was like the ride had never existed. I contacted Uber support. They told me sometimes trip data disappears if the app crashes or if a ride is canceled mid-trip. But I know what I saw. I completed that ride. I picked that man up. He got in and out of my car. He said what he said. "You picked the wrong guy up tonight." I've never seen him again, and I hope I never do. But now, every time I get a ping in a dark parking lot or a silent passenger sits behind me, I remember that night, and I wonder, did he ever find the right car? The ride I'll never forget. This happened in 2021, back when I was driving for Uber full-time. I live in a city that gets a lot of tourists, especially in the summer. So if you're consistent, rideshare gigs can bring in decent money. I usually worked nights, partly because I'm a night owl, and partly because there's less traffic and drunk passengers tend to tip better on their way home from bars. The night this happened, it was around 1:30 a.m. on a typical Saturday. I had just dropped off a group of loud, obnoxious college kids. So when I got a new request that looked quieter, I was honestly relieved. The name said Chris, and the pickup was listed on a small side street just off downtown. Here's where things started to feel off. The GPS pin wasn't near any apartments or nightlife, just behind an old strip mall near a back lot that looked abandoned. Still, I figured maybe it was just a bad GPS marker. That happens sometimes. When I got there, I saw a guy standing on the corner, hoodie, jeans, staring at his phone. He didn't look drunk or high, just quiet. I pulled up and said, "Chris?" He nodded and got in the back seat without saying a word. I greeted him, asked how his night was going. Nothing. No response. Just silence. He didn't seem aggressive, just distant, zoned out. I started the trip. The drop-off was on the far side of town, about 25 minutes away, in a quiet suburban neighborhood I'd only been to once or twice. About 5 minutes into the drive, I noticed something weird. Chris had his phone out, but he wasn't texting or calling anyone. Instead, he was holding it flat in his lap, with the flashlight turned on. The beam was pointed slightly upward, toward the back of my seat. I kind of half joked, "Everything okay back there?" He mumbled, "Yeah," and turned the light off. That was it. The next 20 minutes were dead silent. Just the sound of the engine, the empty roads, and this weird, growing tension in the car. I couldn't explain it, but something felt off. Not dangerous, but off. Like I wasn't alone, even though I was the only one talking. Eventually, we reached the neighborhood. As I pulled up to the address, I noticed something. The house was completely dark. No lights on, no signs of movement, no porch light, no glow from inside. Just stillness. I turned to him and asked, "Is this the right place?" He didn't answer, just stared out the window like he didn't hear me. I repeated myself, louder this time. "Hey, this the spot?" He finally nodded. So I put the car in park and said, "All right, man, have a good night." But he didn't move. He just sat there, still staring. So I asked, "You good?" After a moment, he finally reached for the handle and stepped out. But he didn't close the door. He just stood there, facing the dark house. I waited until he reached the porch, then I pulled off. As soon as I turned the corner, I ended the trip in the app and started heading back toward downtown. A few blocks later, I stopped at a 24-hour gas station to use the bathroom and grab a drink. I parked on the side of the building, went in, and came back out maybe 4 minutes later. And when I got back to my car, Chris was sitting in the back seat. Same hoodie, same expression. I froze. I swear I locked the car. But somehow he was back inside. I slowly opened the driver's door, keeping my eyes on him through the mirror, and asked, "How did you get back in?" He just said, "Take me back." I reached for my phone. "I'm calling the cops," I said. That's when he leaned forward, close enough for me to hear his breath. And he whispered, "They're still in the house." Something about the way he said it, I don't know. It didn't feel threatening, it felt broken, like something had snapped in him, so I played along. "Whose house is that?" I asked. He said, "My parents." "You live there?" "Not anymore." The way he said it made every hair on my neck stand up. I started driving, back to the pickup point. Every instinct told me not to, but I didn't know what else to do. As we got closer, he started breathing heavier, rocking slightly in the back seat. At one point, he whispered, almost to himself, "They're still there. They won't leave, no matter what I do." When we pulled up again, the house was still dark, still lifeless. He got out. No goodbye, no thank you. Just walked up to the front door and stood there. He didn't knock, didn't go inside. He just stood still. I watched him for 30 seconds. Then I drove away. This time, I made damn sure the doors were locked. 3 blocks down, I parked under a streetlight and just sat there, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? A man got into my car twice and said some unsettling things. There was no crime, no proof, just a lingering feeling I couldn't shake. The next day, I reported the ride to Uber, and honestly, I still regret not reporting it to the police, because that man clearly needed help. Or maybe someone else needed protection. To this day, I don't know if that was really his parents' house, or if anyone was in that house at all. The delivery. I'll never forget. I'm 18 years old, and I live alone in a small apartment about 8 miles outside of town, with just my dog for company. Being that far out, ordering food delivery can be kind of a hassle, but I never thought twice about using Uber Eats. You hear weird stories sometimes, sure, but you never expect one of those stories to be your own. It was a Friday evening, and I was cleaning up the apartment, getting everything ready for my boyfriend's visit the next day. We're long distance, so I always try to make the place nice before he arrives on Saturdays. After a couple of hours, it was past 6 p.m., and I was starving. I didn't want to mess up the kitchen I'd just cleaned, so I decided to order food. I placed the order, and a few minutes later, I got the notification, "Your driver is on the way." White Honda Fit Sport. All good. Because I live alone, I always have the delivery instructions set to leave the food at the door, contactless delivery. I was sitting on the couch watching TV when the notification popped up. "Your order has been delivered." I jumped up, excited. I was so hungry, but when I opened the door, there was nothing there. I looked around. None of the doors nearby had my food either. So I went back inside to message the driver, and that's when I heard a knock. It was my next-door neighbor. He was holding my food. He said, "Hey, sorry, I grabbed this from your driver." He was looking through your windows. I wasn't sure what he was doing, but it didn't feel right. I thanked him, obviously confused and a little unsettled, but I didn't know what to make of it. I took my food, went inside, and tried to shake it off. I ate dinner, put on a movie, and just tried to enjoy my night. Later, I showered, made sure the doors were locked, and went to bed. I called my boyfriend for a bit, then fell asleep. But my dog kept waking me up, growling at the window, then the back door. And even though he's a tiny 5-pound Yorkie, it still freaked me out. I calmed him down, got him to sleep again, and just when I thought everything was fine, bang, 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 loud knocking on my window. My dog went crazy, barking, growling, even whining. I froze. I pulled the covers over me, just enough to see the window, and tried to stay quiet. Then I whispered into my phone and called 911. I told the dispatcher someone was in my backyard, and my bedroom window doesn't lock. It would be easy to open. She told me to go to a different room and that officers were on their way. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed a knife. Then I looked out the kitchen window and saw a white Honda Fit Sport parked across the street. It was the same Uber Eats driver's car. There's a big open field across from my apartment, used for parking and sometimes letting dogs run, and he was parked right there. But I didn't see anyone in the car. That's when it hit me. He's in my backyard. When the police arrived, I was shaking and crying. I told one officer everything while the others checked out the yard and the car. The car was empty, but they found footprints in the backyard, deep in the mud from the night before. My neighbor came out, and I watched him explain how he took the food from the driver earlier. One of the officers asked if I wanted to stay at my neighbor's place for the night, but I just wanted this to be over. Eventually, everyone left. I locked up again, tried to relax, and somehow, After a few hours, I fell asleep. But at 2 a.m., I woke up to pounding on my front door. Police! I jumped up, terrified, thinking, there's no way this is happening again. I opened the door to find the same female officer I spoke to earlier. She said, "We stayed nearby, hidden, in case he came back." And he did. "We just arrested him walking up to your front door." My heart dropped. She said he was now in custody, and I wouldn't have to worry anymore. But the truth is, I never really slept peacefully again after that night. And I don't use Uber Eats anymore, especially when I'm home alone. Don't forget to like and subscribe to be safe of all the nightmares. And remember, the darkness is always surrounding us, just waiting for a chance. Thanks for watching. See you in the next stories.